WNST into the basement on one of these NFL owners meetings missions. Besides getting sick and my wife getting sick and us missing Jimmy Buffett on opening day, we get to hang out with old friends, and this guy has covered the National Football League for 38 years, but he's not here to talk about the past and the National Football League and our friendship through the Allers and all these years in covering the football team. He's here to talk about the Houston Astros because he is one of the biggest Astros fans I know on the other side down there at the Houston Chronicle, just awaiting the rings and the banners and the last little taste of being the 2017 World Champs. We welcome John McClain back on from the Houston Chronicle, and to the victor go the spoils, and the Orioles will have to sit around this week and watch the Astros hang flags and put on rings. Right, John?
Nestor, it's an unprecedented time in Houston sports history with the Astros, the defending world champions. They are built to make a run at repeating by fortifying their starting rotation and their bullpen, and they're just loaded with young talent, not just in the majors, but in the minors as well. So people are really pumped. They were very smart. You know, they started on the road and won 3 out of 4 from the Rangers. I believe, Nestor, and I think you will too, I don't know why baseball can't figure this out. The defending World Series champion should open at home every year. I believe the team should open like the NFL. That first game should be the only game in town and on national television. That way, it just seems more fitting instead of having to go on the road for 4 games like you finished in 4th place. So people are very fired up about the Astros. They were very smart because they scheduled the ring ceremony in the second game of the Orioles to help them sell out that game. And I'm guessing they're going to break their all-time attendance record because people are so pumped. Plus, you know, it's a great ballpark. They've got so many popular players. It's a team that everybody likes. They like the owner. They like the manager. They like the general manager. They've just done a terrific job of constructing an organization that people like and respect.
I mean, you get at this from 100,000 feet, maybe 1,000,000 feet up. You know, you go off the planet with ownership and what happened with Bud Adams down there and trying to get a team back in the league in Los Angeles, and now the McNair situation and how the knees affected that franchise and all the political stuff. The Astros on the other side of this thing where they were the little engine that never did in all of your childhood in the 60s, and name changes and Nolan Ryan and changing uniforms every 2 or 3 years and changing color patterns and everything that went on before Bagwell and Biggio finally getting there. But the change from Drayton McClain to this ownership group and what's happened there has to be something said about building something from scratch, because we've had the same crappy owner here for 25 years, John, and I know what a baseball fan you are, and everybody here is just kind of holding on to see if John Angelos is going to be Rocky Wirtz and figure this thing out. But the fresh ownership approach is something that I don't think can be underestimated here, because there's no brand to build off of there when you're winning 50 games, nobody's coming to your games, nobody's watching the games on TV, and nobody's engaged. It's very, very hard to start with that and get it to what you're seeing this week where you're hanging championship banners and you fortified the team to maybe win again this year, right?
When you get a new owner, it's like a box of chocolates and Forrest Gump. You never know what you're going to get. Jim Crane had tried to buy the Rangers. He had lost. He bought the Astros. Nobody knew anything about him. He had controversy in his businesses with the EEOC, and so nobody knew. And then he took over a team that they had traded all the top players, the high-priced players, and nobody knew if that plan was going to work. We've seen it before. You know, there was a string of 100-loss seasons, boycotts by fans. One-time TV ratings were 0. You couldn't even get the games locally for a while because of fights with cable companies. But then he hired Jeff Luhnow from the Cardinals. Jeff came in with this plan to build from the ground floor. You don't see in baseball it happen as much as other sports. And it's worked to perfection. Just think, in one draft, they got Alex Bregman, who's been a great third baseman, and then 3 picks later they get Kyle Tucker, who led the major leagues in the exhibition season in RBIs, and I think on base percentage, and they sent him down because he's 21 and they don't have room for him. And so he's an example of one of the many players they've got in their minors that people are just chomping at the bit to see them come up based on what they did during spring training. And so people here feel very fortunate. Jim Crane is very popular. He stayed out of it. He's very shy, and he doesn't do many interviews. He prefers to stay in the background, and he lets Jeff Luhnow and the manager A.J. Hinch do what they want. He gives them the financial resources they need to make deals, to hire coaches, and he's been just terrific. And at first we were all like, oh, my God, I don't care if this guy would play baseball in college. You know, he doesn't know squat about running a team, and he stayed out of it. And, you know, Nestor, everybody should be that lucky to have an owner who will give you the resources you need, stay out of it, and just enjoy the fruits of his financial labor.
John McClain has covered the National Football League for 38 years, knows a lot about sports owners down at the Houston Chronicle. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at McClain_on_NFL out on Twitter. Hundreds of thousands follow him, and you should as well. And we're talking baseball with a football guy, but you know, I want to go through this because, John, I mean, you and I have talked to Astros going back to 2015 when you put me with Pastorini on the tour, and Keuchel pitched against the Yankees that night. And it was sort of the beginning of a little bit of Astros magic for this era, but that 16 thing was awful. This time last year, they started winning games, and at the All-Star break last year, I remember having you on talking some Astros when the Orioles went down there to play, and the Astros were skunking the Orioles in the summertime, and you were talking about winning a championship. That was before Verlander came along. That was before Garrett Cole came along. I mean, it feels like an embarrassment of riches when you feel like you thought you could win without those guys in July. Now you're going to have a whole year with them. That maybe losing Keuchel in free agency, time will tell on that. But certainly for 1 year, 162 games, from a rotational standpoint, this thing's loaded to win right now and loaded to give the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Indians and anybody else who gets in their way trouble come October.
Garrett Cole, who they traded from the Pirates, pitched at the Rangers as the 4th starter, pitched 7 innings, gave up 2 hits, and struck out 11, and gave up 1 run in the first inning on an opposite field home run, and he was tremendous. And in their first 4 games, they started 3 pitchers who were the opening day starters for their teams last year, Verlander, Keuchel, and Cole. And their 5th starter is Charlie Morton, who won the 7th game in L.A. in the World Series, and they thought it would be kind of appropriate to let him start the home opener. And then 2 guys that have started in the past, Colin McHugh and Brad Peacock. And Peacock was 13-2 last year when he went from long reliever to starter. So they really have 7 starters, and that's not counting young guys that they had to send down to AAA so they would get to pitch regularly. So it's kind of an embarrassment of riches right now. They fortified their bullpen with 2 long relievers, Joe Smith and Rondon. I can't remember what his first name is. The one thing this team lacks, they have 1 left-handed reliever, Tony Sipp, and how he stays on the team is beyond me because he's not very good. So I think at some point you'll see Jeff Luhnow make a deal with somebody to bring in a left-handed reliever they can actually count on.
John, the Rockets have sort of been red glare there, right? I mean, the Warriors tripping up right now. There's a real feeling that the Rockets could bring a title to town 8-10 weeks from now, right? I mean, it's kind of a crazy time for everything, and yet the biggest star in the city's probably followed by Watson, right? Literally.
We got the biggest stars here are out. Jose Altuve, James Harden, and J.J. Watt. And then Deshaun Watson, who played in 7 games before he blew out his knee, is on the rise. This time next year, if Watson stays healthy, he could be the biggest star. And because people are so fired up about him. The Rockets, for the longest time, we're thinking, okay, if they could just get to the Western Conference Finals and have a good showing against the Warriors, take them to 6 or 7 games, there's no shame in that. But as they continued to win, despite injuries to James Harden, Chris Paul, Clint Capella, Trevor Ariza, and looking back, the time those guys missed was times they got to rest. So it might be good once the playoffs begin. But right now they are guaranteed. They have the best record in the NBA, guaranteed home court advantage. People now are going to be disappointed if they don't win the championship because it is the deepest team they've ever had. Daryl Morey's done a tremendous job of bringing in players. And Mike D'Antoni, who's hungry for a championship, you know, they got shooters. They're fun to watch, Nestor. They put up those threes like crazy, and they have been really fun to watch this season because they actually play some defense too. And so I think they got a good chance to win the championship.
John McClain is joining us. He covers all things National Football League. I saw him down at the owners' meetings in Orlando last week. He's covered the NFL and the Texans and the league in 2 cities, from Nashville down to Houston and the Houston Chronicle. McClain _on_NFL. I'm going to go back to the Astros and what you said about opening the season, because we got screwed here a few years ago because the Orioles had Camden Yards locked up the year after we won the Super Bowl. We had to open in Denver on the road while there was a Keith Urban concert going on in the harbor here. It was very, very weird on the NFL side, and Angelos never took full blame or credit for that, but it certainly was the Orioles involved in that decision. This weekend to go to Dallas, and here we have the Baltimore-Washington thing that if the Redskins and the Ravens really played twice a year, it would be ugly. Ditto if we played the Eagles. But the Steelers thing is what it is, and that's our sort of rival for the modern era. Dallas has always had Houston, and Houston's always had Dallas, but Dallas has always had the upper hand with the football team. The baseball team's been pretty good for a long time, and Houston's been sort of an understudy, and I know in your market that's never been allowed or thought of, even during the Oiler-Cowboy era. But, boy, this is a real a chance to go kick Dallas in the teeth with how the baseball team has played and how the basketball team could play, right?
It's interesting the way the Rangers and the Astros have a tremendous rivalry. People here hate the Rangers, and one reason is during Hurricane Harvey, when the Astros were displaced, they asked the Rangers if they would swap a series, and they played the series in Arlington, and then later the season they would play the series here. The Rangers said no, said they were still in the playoff race, and they thought it was unfair to their fans, which was a crock. And so the Astros had to relocate to St. Pete and play in the Rays Stadium where they had like 200 people. So people here really held that against them. The media in the Metroplex blasted the Rangers for doing it. And when they played at the end of the season at Arlington, there was about 200 people in the stands because the Rangers were out of it and they were terrible. So starting the season up there and winning 3 out of 4 was a big deal here. The Mavericks and the Rockets have a rivalry, a lot of controversy between those teams. The problem in football is the Cowboys and their fans don't even acknowledge there's a football team in Houston because there's so many Cowboy fans here. I tell people, Nestor, when they move to Houston or they come to the Texans and they see all these Cowboy fans and can't figure out how that happened, I said, look, Cowboy fans in Houston are like humidity, mosquitoes, and roaches. You just learn to live with them. And so that's what they do. And when the Cowboys are winning, they couldn't be more obnoxious. Cowboys come to Houston this year, first time in 8 years. Last time they went to Arlington to play 4 years ago and went to overtime, and there were so many Texans fans in the stands, Tony Romo had to go to a silent count. Now the Cowboys come here, and it's funny, even though they play in the AFC South, and they're hoping to win it again for the 3rd time in 4 years and the 5th time in 8 years, the Cowboy game is going to be the biggest because of the rivalry with the fans, not the teams.
John McClain can be followed at the Houston Chronicle as well as McClain_on_NFL. And I want to, leave with a little bit of NFL conversation because it is what you do for a living professionally. We were down at the owners' meetings. Any takeaways from the owners' meetings on, let's say, the knee and some of the words of the Texans owner, McNair, which is somehow I think these guys still think that blackballing Kaepernick and the knee and it's just going to all go away, or they're going to wish it away. It feels to me like the Ravens don't have a plan for a half-empty stadium that they had all last year. I mean, the league has some real internal issues into how this thing is being handled. Now it's going to be handled moving forward. I don't think they're doing a very good job with this, John.
Well, what is the answer? They don't have a rule, and I don't think it'll change. Now, they go to Atlanta for the meetings in May, and they're supposed to talk about it. They didn't talk about it in Orlando. Bob McNair he's 80 years old. He's a conservative Republican. He's never changed his stance. He does not want players kneeling in the anthem. He believes that it's still an affront to the flag and patriotism, even though the players say it's not. And they've only knelt in one game at one game. And Bill O'Brien controls that as the head coach, not McNair. He doesn't tell them everybody's going to stand. He's not done that. And O'Brien, when we asked him about what McNair said, he told us what he said last year. I believe in the players' right to express themselves. He didn't say they can kneel if they want to, but it's up to him to keep the players together, whatever they do. They're going to go to Atlanta. They're not going to put in a rule like the NBA. Nestor, why is it the NBA avoids criticism for having a rule that you have to stand and everybody gives them a pass, like everybody gives the 49ers a pass at letting Eric Reid go and not re-signing him, even though they could use him, but everybody else is criticized for not signing him? What do they know that everybody else doesn't know or may know? But I'll tell you this it wouldn't surprise me if they don't go to the old way they did business, which was don't come out till after the national anthem. I could see that. A lot of owners want that. Roger Goodell seems to want to preserve the status quo, and if players want to kneel, let them kneel. And I tell you this, knowing what I know from owners, they were bombarded by sponsors, ticket holders, club seat holders. They do not most of them don't like players kneeling during the national anthem. And they were hoping this coalition of players that they're going to give money to for social causes would make it go away, but there's too many players rejected the coalition. So they should just leave them alone and let them do what they want as part of their freedom of expression.
John McClain with some words of wisdom out of Houston. Going to have a better football team down there in Houston with Deshaun Watson, right? But so much really about getting better and then getting back on the field and being able to do what clearly he had a gift to do in the early going. I mean, we haven't seen anything quite like that. I know it excited your community in a way that it should. I mean, in a way that any community would get that kind of a quarterback and that sort of a presence.
The Texans had 20 players on injured reserve, including 13 starters, a lot of good ones, too. And I've never seen a team have that many key players out. So they're kind of looking back at it, saying, it's just bad luck. Watson's supposed to be able to participate in a lot of drills in OTAs, but they'll wait till training camp to turn him loose. J.J. Watt, he doesn't need to be on the field. He knows Romeo Crennel's defense inside out. They'll treat him at camp like they did last year. Practice a day, rest a day, practice two, take one off, kind of let him go at his own pace. They've signed 8 free agents. They'll sign a couple more. They don't have a first or second round pick. And they've signed, among those 8 free agents, Tyrann Mathieu will start at safety. Aaron Colvin from Jacksonville will start at corner. And they've got 3 picks in the 3rd round. The only thing I can tell you, Nestor, that first one's going to be an offensive tackle.
Well, it's weird to say they don't have a first-round pick and they don't have a second-round pick, but, such is the price of doing business, right?
Well, the first-round pick is Deshaun Watson. To get him, they swapped first-round picks, and then they gave this year's for Watson. Knowing what they know now, they gave next year's number 1 for Watson. In his 6 starts, they averaged 34 points a game. In his last 5 starts, they averaged 39. he was on a pace to throw for 43 touchdowns and run for 6. And he got hurt in practice on just a non-contact thing where he tossed the ball, bounced, came down wrong, and grabbed his knee. It was the day after the World Series, and the emotions in the penthouse went straight to the outhouse.
John, take care of yourself. It's always good to catch up with you, even better at Disney World over free drinks, and always appreciate our friendship and your visits here. Don't beat up on my Orioles too much this week, but man, you got high hopes down there. I mean, you might win an NBA title, might win another World Series. I mean, certainly going to have a crack at it. So you got a fun summer ahead, even before they snap the football in September, right?
Right now, Nestor, it's the best time in the history of Houston sports with the Astros, Rockets, and Deshaun Watson coming back. Enjoyed seeing you in Orlando, and my best to Jen. Take care.
You got it. John McClain, the man, the myth, the legend, the general. He has covered the National Football League for 38 years at the Houston Chronicle. One of my all-time favorite people, as well as people to follow. McClain _on_NFL and out at the Houston Chronicle. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. It's all brought to you by buyatoyota.com. Our morning newspaper ships digitally to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. We're there, get you in shape and always judgment-free. And there's one right around the corner from you. Learn more at Planet Fitness as well as PlanetOfTriumphs.com. Our morning newspaper also features the Maryland Jockey Club entries for Laurel this weekend, as well as the front of our website at WNST.net. Coming up on Black Eyed Susie, Pink Day, Preakness, Derby's coming up, all the horse racing season ahead. Justify is the horse they keep telling me to keep an eye on. That's a Bob Baffert horse, so I'll be doing that as well. And you can learn more out at our website about all things that are going on at Pimlico next month and Laurel this month. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.